The year was 2347, and Admiral Jack stood at the window of the United Earth Council chamber, looking up at the stars. Those same stars had once filled humanity with wonder and hope. Now they reminded him of blood and fire. 200 years ago, humans had reached beyond their small blue planet and discovered they were not alone. The galaxy was full of life, ancient civilizations that had sailed between stars for thousands of years before humans had even learned to make fire. These aliens had formed the Galactic Concord, an alliance of 12 powerful empires that controlled most of known space. When humanity arrived, the Conquered did not welcome them. They laughed at the small, soft creatures from the edge of the galaxy. Humans were primitive, they said. Humans were weak. Humans were nothing more than insects crawling out of their tiny world. For 2 centuries, humanity had tried to prove them wrong through peace. They offered friendship. They offered trade. They offered knowledge, and in return they received contempt. 3 times the alien empires had invaded human space. 3 times Earth had barely survived. Millions of humans had died on distant worlds, their colonies burned to ash by beings who saw them as less than animals. And still, humanity had tried to find peace. But today, everything changed. Turned away from the window as the doors opened behind him. A young officer walked in, her face pale and her hands shaking as she held a data tablet. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "the reports from 7 are confirmed." Already knew what she would say. He had seen the first images 3 hours ago, but he let her speak because someone needed to say the words out loud. The Empire attacked the colony at dawn local time. They used plasma bombardment from orbit. The entire settlement is gone. She paused, struggling to continue. 2,300,000 civilians, no survivors. Closed his eyes. 2 million people, families, children, workers and teachers and farmers who had traveled across the stars to build a new home. All of them gone in a single morning because they wanted to remind humanity of its place. "Thank you, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "You may go." She left and stood alone in the silence. He thought about the faces he would never see again. He thought about the promises Earth had made to protect its people. He thought about 200 years of patience and hope and restraint. And then he thought about what came next. The council met within the hour. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in the great chamber, their faces showing the same mix of grief and anger that felt in his heart. They had come to make a decision that would change the course of human history. Ambassador Laura stood at the center of the room. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of worlds. "For 2 centuries, we have shown the galaxy our best nature," she said. "We have offered peace when they gave us war. We have offered mercy when they showed us cruelty. We have buried our dead and rebuilt our cities and continued to believe that one day they would see us as equals." She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly. "That day will never come, not because we are weak, but because they refuse to see our strength. They mistake our patience for fear. They mistake our mercy for submission. They think our silence means we cannot speak." Walked slowly to the central podium, where a single red button glowed beneath a glass cover. "Today we speak. Today we draw a line in the stars. And today we make a promise to every being in this galaxy." She pressed the button, and across known space, every communication channel carried her next words. "This is Ambassador Laura, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government. We address this message to the Empire and to all members of the Galactic Concord." In throne rooms and war chambers across 1,000 worlds, aliens stopped to listen. "You have taken our people, you have burned our worlds. You have shown us nothing but hatred for 200 years, and through it all we have held our hand. We have chosen peace over vengeance. We have chosen hope over despair." His voice grew harder, colder. "That choice ends now. Earth is drawing a line. Any ship that crosses into human space with hostile intent will be destroyed. Any empire that attacks human colonies will face consequences beyond anything you can imagine. Any being who takes human life will learn that humanity is not the weak, primitive species you believe us to be. She leaned closer to the microphone. This is not a threat. This is a warning. The last warning you will ever receive. Step beyond the line and face complete destruction. We will not negotiate. We will not show mercy. We will not stop until every enemy of humanity understands that the age of our suffering is over. The transmission ended. Silence filled the council chamber. Across the galaxy, the reaction was exactly what expected. They laughed. The other empires dismissed the warning as the desperate words of a dying species. They had heard threats before. Humans always threatened and never acted. But deep beneath the Nevada desert, in a laboratory that did not exist on any official record, Doctor watched the broadcast with a small smile on her face. She turned to the massive machine behind her, a device that had taken 100 years to build. It hummed with power that the aliens could not comprehend, energy drawn from the fabric of space itself. Project Horizon was complete. For a century, the minds on Earth had worked in secret, developing technology that would make every weapon in the galaxy look like a child's toy. The aliens thought humans were primitive because human ships were slow and human guns were weak. They never wondered why humanity had survived 3 invasions despite those weaknesses. They never considered that perhaps humanity was hiding something. Picked up her phone and called Admiral. "The ambassador's warning has been delivered," she said. "Horizon is ready for deployment. When they cross the line, and they will cross the line, we will be prepared." His voice was heavy with the weight of what was coming. "Then God help them all," he said, "because we will not." The stars continued to shine above Earth, cold and distant and unaware of what was about to change. Somewhere in the darkness, the fleet was already preparing to prove that human warnings meant nothing. They had no idea that humanity had been waiting for this moment for 200 years. High Sovereign sat upon his throne of black stone, watching the human ambassador's message for the 3rd time. Each time he watched it, he laughed a little harder. The throne room of the Empire was vast, built from the bones of conquered worlds. Pillars of dark metal rose toward a ceiling painted with scenes of ancient victories. For 10,000 years, they had ruled their corner of the galaxy. They had crushed rebellions, absorbed smaller species, and built an empire that stretched across 500 star systems. And now these humans, these soft little creatures who had barely left their single planet, dared to threaten them. "Play it again," commanded, his 4 arms folded across his armored chest. His advisors shifted nervously, but the message played once more. When it finished, the High Sovereign rose from his throne and addressed his Senate. "Do you hear this?" he asked, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The insects believe they can frighten us. They think their words carry weight. They imagine that we, the masters of 1,000 conquered peoples, will tremble before their empty threats." The Senate laughed, as they always did when their leader spoke. "The humans have been in space for 2 centuries, continued. "We have been among the stars for 10,000 years. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. Their colonies fall like dry leaves in autumn, and yet they dare to draw lines and issue warnings." He turned to his military commander, Warlord Hose, who stood at the base of the throne. "Show them what warnings look like. Take the fleet to their asteroid mining stations. Destroy everything. Leave no survivors." Hose bowed low. "It will be done, High Sovereign. The humans will learn their place." Far across the galaxy, aboard the starship UES Defiance, Commander Price received the intelligence report with a heavy heart. The Defiance was humanity's flagship, a vessel built for war but hopping for peace. Price had served aboard her for 15 years, watching and waiting for a conflict he prayed would never come. Now that prayer had been answered with silence. "Admiral," Price said into his communication device, "we've intercepted transmissions. They're mobilizing a fleet of 300 warships. Target is the Belt mining stations. Attack scheduled in 48 hours." Admiral's response came after a long pause. "How many people at the stations?" 12,000 workers. We could evacuate, but it would take at least 72 hours with available transport." Another pause. "We won't evacuate." Price felt his blood run cold. "Sir, if we run, they'll chase us forever. They'll burn every colony, every station, every ship until there's nothing left. The line has been drawn, Commander. We stand." Price understood. He didn't like it, but he understood. "What are your orders?" "Prepare the Defiance and whatever escort vessels we can gather. You will meet thee at the boundary. You will remind them of our warning, and if they cross—" His voice grew quiet. "Then you will witness what happens next." The communication ended, and Price stood alone on the bridge of his ship. 12 escort vessels against 300 warships. The math was simple and terrible. But there was something in his voice, something that sounded almost like confidence. Price had served under the Admiral for many years. He knew that never bluffed. On Earth, Ambassador Laura made one final attempt at peace. She requested a diplomatic meeting with the through official Galactic conquered channels. For 3 hours, she waited in the communications center, hoping for a response that might prevent the coming war. The response came at midnight. It was not words, it was an image. The ambassador had sent coordinates to a region of space where the wreckage of human ships floated in the darkness. Ships destroyed in the last invasion. Ships full of people who had died far from home. Beneath the image was a single line of text. "Here is where warnings lead." Stared at the message for a long time. Then she closed the channel and walked out of the room. She found Doctor waiting in the hallway. "They refused," said. "It was not a question." Nodded. "They always refuse. They can't imagine that we might be something more than they believe. Their arrogance blinds them." "And Project Horizon, you're certain it will work?" Smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Horizon manipulates the fundamental forces of the universe. We can create singularities, Ambassador, black holes, points of gravity so intense that nothing can escape, not light, not matter, not even time itself. We have tested it on asteroids, on dead moons, on targets far from watching eyes. It works." Felt a chill run down her spine. How long have we had this? The theory came a century ago. The first successful test was 40 years back. We've been refining it ever since, waiting for the moment when we would have no choice but to use it. Why didn't we use it before, during the invasions? His expression grew dark. Because using it once means using it forever. Once the galaxy knows what we can do, everything changes. We wanted to find another way. We wanted to believe that peace was possible. She looked toward the stars visible through the nearby window. "But they killed 2 million people on 7. They're coming to kill 12,000 more. They will never stop unless we make them stop. So now we use Horizon, and we pray that we can live with what comes after." In the depths of space, Warlord Hose assembled his fleet. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. His crews were eager, hungry for battle against an enemy they considered barely worthy of the effort. As the fleet prepared to depart, Hose received a final message from High Sovereign. "Make the humans suffer," the High Sovereign commanded. "Make them understand that their warnings are meaningless. Show the galaxy what happens when insects challenge the—" Hose smiled, his sharp teeth gleaming in the red light of his command deck. "It will be my pleasure, High Sovereign." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, racing toward human space, racing toward the line that Earth had drawn, racing toward a fate that no could imagine. On the Defiance, Commander Price watched the long-range sensors track the approaching armada. 12 human ships against 300 aliens. It seemed like a joke. It seemed like suicide. But Price had seen the classified files now. He knew about Horizon, and for the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never expected to feel when facing overwhelming odds. He felt sorry for the enemy. "All hands," he announced over the ship's communication system. "Battle stations. They are coming, and they're about to learn why humanity survived this long." The stars waited in silence for what was to come. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, their dark hulls blocking out the distant stars. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, built to conquer and destroy. Warlord Hose stood at the center of his command deck, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The human asteroid belt lay ahead, filled with mining stations and cargo ships. Easy targets, helpless prey. "Scan for enemy vessels," he ordered. His sensor officer worked quickly. 13 human ships detected, Warlord. 1 large vessel and 12 smaller escorts. They are positioned directly in our path. Hose laughed. 13 ships, against 300. The humans truly have lost their minds. "They are broadcasting a message, Warlord." "Play it." Commander Price's voice filled the command deck. It was calm and steady, without fear or anger. "Fleet, this is the UES Defiance. You have entered restricted space. You are approaching the boundary established by the United Earth Government. Turn back now and no harm will come to you. Cross the line and you will face consequences you cannot imagine. This is your only warning." The officers looked at each other with amusement. Some of them openly laughed. "Consequences we cannot imagine," Hose repeated mockingly. "Shall I show them consequences?" He opened a channel to the human ship. "Human Commander, your warning is heard and rejected. We have conquered 1,000 worlds and broken 100 species. Your 13 ships are nothing. Your lines are nothing. You are nothing. Watch now as we show you the true meaning of consequences." He cut the channel and turned to his fleet commanders. "All ships forward. Destroy the human vessels and proceed to the mining stations. Leave no survivors." The massive fleet began to move, engines flaring bright against the darkness of space. On the Defiance, Commander Price watched the wall of ships approaching. His tactical display showed the numbers clearly, 300 to 13. Even a child could calculate the outcome of that fight. But Price was not fighting to win. He was fighting to buy time. "All squadrons prepare to engage," he ordered. "We don't need to stop them, we just need to slow them down." Captain Cole led the strike squadron, 12 interceptor craft that darted ahead of the main formation. Cole was young, barely 30 years old, but he had trained his entire adult life for a moment like this. "Squadron, stay tight," he commanded. "We hit their front line, cause as much chaos as possible, then fall back to the Defiance. Don't try to be heroes, just buy the Admiral time." His pilots acknowledged the order. They all knew what they were flying into. They all knew that some of them would not survive. The two forces met at the edge of the asteroid belt. Cole's squadron struck first, weaving between the massive warships and firing at their sensor arrays. The alien vessels were built for overwhelming force, not for fighting small, fast targets. For precious minutes, the human interceptors danced through the enemy fleet, disabling sensors and confusing targeting systems. But the numbers were too great. One by one, the gunners found their targets. Cole watched as 2 of his pilots vanished in balls of fire, then a third, then a fourth. "Fall back," he ordered. "All surviving craft fall back to the Defiance." 6 interceptors remained from the original 12. They retreated toward the human flagship, leaving trails of burning debris behind them. The Defiance and her escort ships opened fire next. Human weapons were not as powerful as guns, but the crews were skilled and determined. They focused their fire on the lead vessels, trying to create a gap in the enemy formation. 3 ships took damage. One was forced to fall back with a damaged engine, but the rest kept coming, their guns blazing with deadly fire. The escort ship UES Valor exploded under concentrated fire, then the UES Spirit, then the UES Courage. Price watched his fleet dying around him. The Defiance shook as enemy fire struck her shields, again and again and again. "Admiral," he called over the communication channel, "we can't hold them. They're crossing the line." His response was immediate. "Understood, Commander. You've done your duty. Now witness what comes next. Activate Horizon." Deep beneath the Earth, Doctor sat at her control console. Her hands moved across the interface with practiced precision. "Horizon active," she said quietly. In space, something impossible began to happen. Warlord Hose saw it first on his sensors. A point of absolute darkness had appeared at the center of the human formation, exactly where the Defiance floated. It was small at first, barely visible against the background of stars. Then it began to grow. "What is that?" Hose demanded. "Sensor officer, identify." The officer's voice trembled. I don't know, Warlord. Sensors cannot penetrate it. It appears to be. Gravity readings are impossible. The readings make no sense." The darkness expanded. Ships nearest to it began to drift toward its center, slowly at first, then faster. "All ships full reverse," Hose commanded. "Get away from that thing." But it was too late. The singularity had crossed a threshold, and now its gravity was inescapable for any vessel within range. The warship Conquest was the first to be pulled in. Its massive hull crumpled like paper as the gravity increased beyond anything its structure could withstand. Then it vanished into the darkness, compressed into a point smaller than an atom. Then the Devastator, then the Wrath, then the Glory. One by one, the warships were dragged toward the singularity. Their engines burned at maximum power trying to escape, but physics itself had become their enemy. Ships collided with each other in their desperate attempts to flee. Hulls cracked. Reactors exploded. Screams filled the communication channels. Hose watched in horror as his fleet disappeared into the darkness. 200 ships, 250, 280. The singularity consumed everything within its reach, then began to collapse. The darkness folded in on itself, shrinking and shrinking until it vanished entirely. Space returned to normal. Stars became visible again. Where 300 warships had floated moments before, there was nothing. Not debris, not wreckage, nothing at all. Ho stood frozen at his command console. His own ship had been at the rear of the formation, just beyond the singularity's reach. 20 ships remained with him, all of them damaged, all of them crewed by beings who had just watched their comrades erased from existence. A communication channel opened. Admiral's voice filled the silence. "Warlord Hose, you crossed the line. You ignored our warning. Now 280 of your ships no longer exist. They were not destroyed. They were not damaged. They simply ceased to be." Paused. "Take your remaining vessels and return to your empire. Tell High Sovereign what you witnessed here today. Tell him that Earth does not make threats. Earth makes promises. And if any ship ever enters human space again, we will do this to your..." The channel closed. Hose stared at the empty space where his fleet had been. Then he gave the only order that made sense. "All ships retreat, maximum speed now." The survivors fled into the darkness, carrying with them a story that would change the galaxy forever. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 100 different worlds in 1,000 different languages, beings of every shape and size heard the same impossible story. A human weapon had destroyed 280 warships in minutes, not through battle, not through superior numbers. The ships had simply vanished, pulled into a point of darkness and erased from existence. At first, no one believed it. They were the greatest military power in the galactic conquered. Their fleets had conquered civilizations that had existed since before humans learned to walk upright. The idea that primitive humanity could destroy such a force seemed like a joke. Then the surviving ships returned to space, and the truth could no longer be. Warlord Hose knelt before High Sovereign in the great throne room, his head bowed in shame. Around them, the Senate sat in stunned silence. The recordings from the battle played on every screen, showing the singularity forming, expanding, and consuming the fleet. "How?" demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "How is this possible?" Hose shook his head. "I do not know, High Sovereign. Our scientists are studying the sensor data, but they cannot explain what we witnessed. The humans have created something beyond our understanding." "Beyond our understanding," rose from his throne, his 4 arms trembling with rage and fear. "We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. We have technologies that primitive species cannot comprehend. And you tell me that humans have surpassed us." "I tell you only what I saw," Hose replied quietly. 280 ships gone in minutes. If we had been closer to the center, we would have joined them. The throne room fell silent. For the first time in living memory, they had no words. On Earth, the mood was different. Admiral Jack stood before the United Earth Council, giving his report on what the military was now calling the Battle of the Line. The representatives listened with a mixture of relief and unease. They had won, but the weapon they had used frightened them almost as much as it had frightened their enemies. "The singularity performed exactly as designed," explained. "Doctor's team controlled it precisely, ensuring that our own ships remained outside its range. The who survived have retreated to their territory. We have received no further threats." A council member raised her hand. "And what happens now? We have shown the galaxy our power. Will they leave us alone, or will they come back in greater numbers?" Nodded toward Ambassador, who stepped forward to answer. "The Galactic Conquered is already reacting," said. "We have received communications from 9 of the 12 member empires. Some are demanding explanations. Others are requesting meetings. A few have expressed something I never expected to hear from alien powers." She paused. "Respect." Doctor watched the council meeting from her laboratory, a cup of cold coffee forgotten in her hand. She had spent most of her life building Project Horizon, and now that it had been used, she felt empty. Her assistant, a young physicist named Sam Riley, sat nearby, running calculations on his tablet. "The singularity collapsed cleanly," he reported. "No residual gravitational effects, no damage to the surrounding spacetime. It's almost as if it never existed." "That was the goal," said quietly. "Create something terrible, then make it disappear, like it never happened." "Except for the ships." "Except for the ships." Set down her coffee and walked to the window. Outside, the Nevada sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. "Do you know why I became a physicist, Sam?" The young man shook his head. "Because I believed that understanding the universe would help us make it better. I thought that if we could unlock the secrets of nature, we could solve our problems without violence. I thought science would bring peace." She laughed bitterly. "Instead, I built the most destructive weapon in the history of the galaxy. I killed more beings today than all the wars in human history combined, and I did it in 7 minutes." Sam was quiet for a long moment, then he spoke carefully. "You saved 12,000 people in the asteroid belt. You prevented another invasion. You showed the galaxy that humanity won't be pushed around anymore. Those aren't small things." "I know," turned back to face him. "But I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if there was another way, if I could have found a different answer." "There wasn't," Sam said firmly. "They weren't going to stop. They never stopped. For 200 years, they attacked us again and again because they thought we were weak. Now they know we're not. That knowledge will save more lives than Horizon took." nodded slowly. She wanted to believe him. Maybe in time she would. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Concord convened an emergency meeting. Representatives from the 12-member empires gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Terminus. For the first time in centuries, every seat was filled. The events at the line had shocked even the oldest and most powerful civilizations. The representative spoke first, his voice heavy with barely controlled anger. The humans have developed a weapon of unimaginable destruction. They have used it against a member of this Concord without warning or mercy. We demand that the Assembly condemn this act and prepare a joint response. A murmur ran through the hall. Then the representative of the collective, an ancient species known for their wisdom, rose to speak. "Without warning or mercy," she repeated, her crystalline voice carrying through the chamber. "Did the humans not warn us? Did Ambassador not broadcast a clear message to every corner of known space? Did she not state, plainly and openly, that any attack would be met with consequences?" The representative sputtered. "Those were empty threats, bluffs." "They were warnings," the replied. "Warnings that your empire chose to ignore. Your fleet attacked human space after being told explicitly what would happen. You brought this upon yourselves." More voices joined the debate. Some supported the calling for action against humanity. Others pointed out that the humans had only defended themselves after years of attacks and invasions. The argument continued for hours, but slowly a truth emerged that no one could deny. Humanity had power now, real power, the kind of power that could not be ignored or dismissed. And for the first time in 200 years, humanity had the attention of the galaxy. Commander Price stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the stars. The battle had cost him 3 escort ships and 6 interceptors. Good people, lost in a fight they barely understood. Captain Cole stood beside him, his arm in a sling from injuries sustained during the retreat. "Was it worth it?" Cole asked quietly. Price thought about the question for a long time before answering. "Ask me in 100 years," he said, "when we know what comes next." The stars offered no answers. They simply continued to shine, indifferent to the small beings who fought and died among them. But something had changed, something fundamental. The humans were no longer prey, and the hunters were finally afraid. 6 months passed after the Battle of the Line, and the galaxy slowly learned to adjust to a new reality. Ambassador Laura stood once again before the Galactic Concord Assembly on Terminus. This time, she was not broadcasting a warning. This time, she had been invited. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from all 12-member empires. Even though were present, though their delegation sat in sullen silence at the back of the chamber. High Sovereign had not come. He had locked himself in his palace after the defeat and had not been seen in public since. "For 200 years," began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space, "humanity asked for only one thing from the Galactic Concord: peace. We asked to be treated as equals, to be given the same respect that you give to each other. We were refused." She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly. "We did not want war. We did not want to build weapons capable of destroying fleets. We did not want to prove our strength through violence. But you left us no choice. When your empires burned our colonies and killed our people, we had 2 options: surrender or survive." Walked slowly across the floor, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had once dismissed humanity as worthless. "We chose to survive, and now you have seen what that choice means." The representative spoke up. "What does humanity want now, Ambassador? Revenge, conquest, power?" Shook her head. "We want what we have always wanted: peace, respect, the right to exist in this galaxy without fear. We have no desire to rule others or to expand our territory through force. We want only to be left alone." "And if you are not left alone?" another representative asked. "Then you have seen what happens." The hall fell silent. After a long moment, the representative rose again. The collective moves to grant humanity full membership in the Galactic Concord, with all rights and protections that membership provides. We believe that the age of treating humans as lesser beings is over. It is time to welcome them as equals. The vote was held immediately. 9 of the 12 empires voted in favor. The voted against, along with 2 of their closest allies. It did not matter, the motion passed. Humanity was now a full member of the Galactic Concord. On Earth, the news was received with quiet satisfaction rather than celebration. Too many had died for this moment to feel like a victory. Admiral Jack received the announcement in his office at United Earth Command. He read the message twice, then set it aside and looked out the window at the blue sky. He had given 40 years of his life to the military, preparing for wars he hoped would never come. Now that the fighting was over, at least for the moment, he felt only tiredness. A knock came at his door. Doctor entered. "You heard the news?" she asked. "I heard." "You don't seem happy." Turned to face her. "I'm relieved. That's different from happy. We bought peace with the lives of 280 ships full of beings who had families and homes and futures. Even if they were our enemies, that's not something to celebrate." Nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about what comes next. Horizon proved what it can do in war. But the same technology that creates singularities could be used for other purposes: energy generation, space travel, perhaps even understanding the universe in ways we've never imagined." "You want to repurpose the project?" "I want to find a way for something good to come from what I built. I can't undo the destruction, but maybe I can balance it with creation." Was quiet for a moment, then he smiled just a little. "That sounds like a worthy goal, Doctor. I hope you succeed." 3 months later, retired from military service. He returned to the small town in Montana where he had grown up and built a cabin by a lake. He spent his days fishing and his nights watching the stars. Sometimes visitors would come. Commander Price, now Captain Price, would stop by when he was on Earth. Captain Cole visited once, his arm fully healed, to tell about the new squadron he was training. Ambassador sent letters from her travels across the galaxy, describing the strange world she was visiting and the strange beings she was meeting. And sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, would think about all the people who had died to bring humanity to this point. The colonies that had burned, the ships that had been destroyed, the families that had been broken. He hoped it had been worth it. He prayed that the peace would last. On 7, where they had killed 2 million humans, a memorial was built. It stood at the center of what had once been the colony's main settlement, a simple pillar of black stone inscribed with the names of everyone who had died. Every year, on the anniversary of the attack, humans from across known space traveled to the memorial to pay their respects. They came from Earth and from the colony worlds, from mining stations and research outposts and places that had not existed when the attack occurred. They came to remember, and they came to promise that it would never happen again. The Empire never fully recovered from the defeat. High Sovereign died 2 years after the battle, still locked in his palace, still refusing to accept what had happened. His successors were more cautious, more willing to respect the boundaries that had been drawn. The other empires of the Galactic Concord treated humanity with a new kind of attention. Some feared them, others respected them. A few even sought friendship and alliance. But all of them remembered the warning that Ambassador had given. All of them understood that Earth's patience had limits. And all of them knew what would happen if those limits were tested again. 20 years after the Battle of the Line, a young historian named Emma Clark published a book about the events that had changed humanity's place in the galaxy. She interviewed Admiral and Doctor and Captain Cole. She read the records and watched the recordings and studied the data. In her conclusion, She wrote something that would be quoted for generations to come. For 2 centuries, humanity was alone in a hostile universe. We were weak and small and afraid, but we never gave up. We endured, we prepared, we waited. And when the moment came, we showed the galaxy what we truly were. Not victims, not prey, not insects to be crushed beneath alien feet. We were survivors, we were fighters, we were human, and that was enough. The stars continued their endless dance, cold and distant and beautiful. Among them, on countless worlds, beings of every shape and size lived their lives and pursued their dreams. And somewhere in that vast darkness, a small blue planet called Earth kept watch, ready to defend its people if the need ever arose again. Some warnings the galaxy had learned were not meant to be tested. Humanity had proven that, and they would prove it again if necessary. But for now there was peace, and that was enough.